If you like this content, please like, comment, subscribe, and share with someone who might enjoy this content too. Part 4. Ethan felt the sand beneath his feet, resisting his efforts to run toward the churning waves. Under the waning moonlight he couldn't see her face, but he had no doubt the small creature wading waist-deep in the ocean was Ava. His lungs ached and his heart hammered with excitement with every step. "Ethan." Julie's slightly husky voice called to his back. The fear rising within him told him he had to keep out of Julie's reach. If she caught up to him, he would never see Ava again. "No," he said to himself, urging his legs to pump faster. The sand, it was on Julie's side. The give and grasp of the sand were making his calves, thighs, and lungs burn. The harder he tried to propel himself forward, the more resistant the sand became. "Ava, help!" Ethan called out. "Ethan, stop!" Julie howled. Ava glanced over her shoulder at him, her eyes radiating a soft golden glow, a beacon showing him where to go. The serenity of the night became chaotic, lights and howls erupted behind him. "Ethan, stop!" Julie wailed once more. He couldn't stop. He had let Ava go too easily the first time. She had come for him, and he knew that if he didn't put forth more effort this time, he'd never see her again. A wave of relief shot through him as his toes felt firm damp sand. "Ava," he called to her once more. Two sets of hands clamped around his shoulders, and he fell forward into the damp compact sand. Ava blinked, the glow of her eyes flickering once, twice, and then they were extinguished. Ethan's limbs were no longer his own. His body rose from the sand and slowly but surely distance grew between him and the shoreline, and Ava. "Ethan, what are you doing?" Julie cried, her face hovering and bouncing above him. "She's here. Ava is here." Ethan tried to explain. Julie's blue eyes glistened in the faint moonlight, her face contorted in a grimace of horror. Ethan's eyes were so heavy and gritty he was sure his retinas would shred if he managed to open his eyes. "Shh!" came a soft soothing voice. "Where's Ava?" Ethan groaned through parched lips. "She's in the waiting room." "I'm your nurse, Liz," the soothing voice said, followed by the sound of rustling clothing. "Let me go get her." Ethan's heart fluttered back to life with excitement, he had not imagined the events. Ava had indeed come to be with him. His throat constricted as a sob welled up from the pit of emptiness he'd been feeling since leaving Ava's side. His eyes burned and then soothed with tears, ungluing his lid from his eyeballs. Slowly, he opened them to see blonde Julie gingerly straddle the doorway of what he assumed was his hospital room. "Where's Ava?" Ethan asked. Julie's frown deepened as she pushed off the door jamb. She glided across the room and settled beside him, followed closely by the strong scent of Chanel No. 5. She set Ava's ivory wrist cuff beside his left hand. "I found that in your bag when I unpacked it to repack it for your stay here," Julie stated flatly. Ethan's fingers wrapped hungrily around the ivory cuff. "Do you want to tell me who Ava is?" Julie asked, a quiver sneaking into her voice. "Julie, you never want me around. I'm just your piggy bank. I think I want to go back to North Carolina, to try and make things work with someone who wants to be with me," Ethan began, soft and low. "You can have everything, the house, the kids, half my assets." "Are you kidding me?" Julie gasped, surprise and shock written on her face. Ethan hung his head, then gave a single shake of the head. "You've lost your mind, Ethan. I'm petitioning to have you held on the Baker Act. Jules, if you do, I'll fight you for everything. Do you really want to deplete the funds you'll receive in a long drawn-out court battle?" Ethan interjected. "I can assure you, I'm as sane as ever. Let's be adults about this." Julie's face grew sallow as a single tear rolled down her left cheek. "You were running straight into the ocean," Julie buried her face in her palms as her shoulders shook with heaving sobs. "No one was there, Ethan," Julie stated. Ethan shook his head. Even so, I know what I need to do, Ethan insisted. Good morning, Mr. Sullivan, a cheerful voice greeted. A young woman in a white coat joined Julie in the doorway. I'm your doctor, Dr. Sanderson. Dr. Sanderson might have been in her mid-20s or early 30s due to the lab coat, but her face was still plump and unmarred by time. Ethan considered asking her for proof that she had graduated medical school but thought better of it. It appeared Dr. Sanderson was aware of her youthful appearance. She wore her dark brown hair in a slick chignon instead of the carefree manner in which all the young people preferred, no outrageous color either like Ethan's own children. As Dr. Sanderson settled beside him, clipboard in hand, he was able to further assess her trustworthiness as a doctor. Her perfect burnt sienna skin made him nervous, not even a frown line was visible. Most of your tests came back normal, Dr. Sanderson began, then paused to look from Ethan to Julie and back. However, one test did come back abnormal. Julie's frown deepened as she met Ethan's eyes. He could tell she too was listing all the possibilities. I noticed that you had an irregular heartbeat, so I ran some tests. You have Takotsubo syndrome, Ethan. It's also known as broken heart syndrome. Many people go through life not knowing they were born with it. It's a condition where the left ventricle bulges due to the thinner walls. Many people, such as yourself, are diagnosed after major life changes. Stressful events cause the ventricle walls to bulge. Takotsubo is named after the shape of the jars Japanese fishermen used to catch octopus tako. There is no cure or regimented treatment for it. The good news is you just need some relaxation and stress reduction, Dr. Sanderson said. Any questions for me? Julie glared at Ethan and he in return. Dr. Sanderson forced a painful smile before she left them alone. Much to Ethan's surprise, Julie didn't say anything more. She turned and walked away. As Ethan sat alone in his hospital room, Ava resurfaced, the subject of ghosts with her. How would anyone measure the level of hauntedness of a town? Was there someone blessed with the task of counting spirits? Was a town's hauntedness measured by the number of stories about said town? Ethan typed, Ghosts Queensport, North Carolina, into the search bar on his cell phone. Immediately a cascade of thumbnails fanned out before his eyes. Most of the thumbnails were of a young person framed too closely, wearing a knit cap of some kind, tinged in fluorescent green from the infrared filter. Ethan scoffed at the predictability and lack of originality of the genre of videos. Midway through the second page was a thumbnail that caught his attention. It was a photo of a queen and house sitting on a grassy knoll looking out onto sand dunes. The title read, Queensport Nautical and Historical Society. Ethan tapped the thumbnail and waited. A bald middle-aged man wearing a forest green cardigan stood slightly to the right of screen before a glass display case. As the video began, a title card appeared in front of the man's chest reading, Matthew Fuller, historian, Ph.D. Dr. Fuller, can you tell our viewers whether you think Queensport deserves the title of most haunted island of the Carolinas? A man's voice off screen asked. Dr. Fuller laughed. Queensport, like many old towns of the original 13 colonies, has seen many resurrections. It has seen many people born and die, so I suppose the real question is, do I believe in the paranormal? He answered, friendly without a hint of condescension. What are some of the best artifacts your museum houses? The voice asked. We have one of the most extensive collection of shipwrights tools. One of our oldest tool dates back to the late 1600s. Few visitors know that we also have an archive full of rich stories, even a few ghost stories for folks like yourself, Dr. Fuller answered. What is one of the best stories you have in your collection? The voice asked eagerly. Dr. Fuller thought for a moment, then smiled and chuckled in amusement. Have you heard of the Dread? Dr. Fuller chuckled. No, the voice quivered with excitement. Tell me. Queensport, like many seafaring communities, have more than our fair share of superstitions. Many homes that are built more often than not have widows' walks and blue doors, and all that stuff. We have hundreds of accounts of mermaid sightings, ghost ships, the point is, we have stories. I can't quite pinpoint when the story of the Dread made its way into our repertoire of stories, but here goes. It was said that a Queensport fishing vessel was caught in a storm somewhere in the Atlantic. After the storm, the ship found an island and the captain decided to moor offshore and send a party ashore for fresh water. The captain sent 5 sailors and a servant boy. A day later only 1 sailor and the servant boy returned. He told the captain the men had all been devoured by winged demons. He and the servant boy were released to warn the rest not to trespass. The ship made its way back to Queensport with something more in tow, the Dread. It seems the surviving sailor was the vector for the Dread. The locals call it the Dread because sailors infected with it become obsessed looking for it and eventually succumb to it either by sickness or taking their own lives. The creature known as the Dread is said to take whatever form it needs to lure in lost souls. There have been many accounts of sightings of the creature in its true form. Some say it has the body of a giant vulture and the head of a woman. Some say it has the body of a bird, but where a head should be is a fleshy mass with voids where a mouth and eyes should be. No one really knows. It can't take just any form though. Locals say it takes on the likeness of those who have died tragic deaths and are buried in unconsecrated grounds. The Dread's only mission is to collect souls on which it feeds. Who knows though? The stories have died away with those needing to make their living on the sea. To me, it sounds like recycled tales from ancient Greek mythology. Doesn't the Dread sound like a siren to you? I thought siren was just another term for mermaid. The cameraman asked. No, sirens were first depicted as giant birds with the head or torso and head of a woman. It was said that when Hades kidnapped Persephone, the goddess Demeter gave some sea nymphs wings so they could help her search for her daughter Persephone. Ethan's mouth went dry, and his body began to tremble. It couldn't be, Ava had been as real as any person. He untethered himself from all the lines keeping him moored to the hospital. He quickly changed before slinking through the sterile corridors until he reached the safety of a normal busy day in St. Augustine. With speed and stealth he didn't know he possessed, Ethan crept back into his empty house and packed all the essentials he would need to be on the road for at least a week. He took his keys from their hook by the door, leaving behind the house keys, letting Julie know he wouldn't return. Part 6. Dawn was slow to come. When it finally broke, he went in search of Dr. Matthew Fuller. With the directions from the hotel front desk, Ethan found himself standing before the familiar broad front porch and Gothic spires and turrets piercing the lazy cold morning. The house was Ava's house, and yet the plaque permanently installed beside the front door read, Queensport Nautical and Historical Society, open Tuesday through Sunday, 10 a.m. to 7 p.m. He gave the right door a stout rap, then waited for an answer. It was only 9 a.m., but Dr. Fuller seemed the type of guy who took his job seriously, someone who would use his downtime wisely to enjoy his hobbies and side projects. After several seconds, Ethan gave the door several booming raps. Dr. Fuller looked exactly as he did in the video Ethan had watched just the day prior, only his cardigan was tan instead of forest green. His brows knitted in confusion at the sight of a visitor so eager that he was early to see the museum. Dr. Fuller, my name is Ethan Sullivan and I need your help, Ethan rattled rapidly. Dr. Fuller's surprise faded into resignation, much to Ethan's surprise. Dr. Fuller reluctantly waved Ethan inside. Are you a ghost hunter, reporter, or blogger? Dr. Fuller asked. None of the above, Ethan replied. I don't know how to say this. I'm a man in love and I need you to tell me I'm not going crazy. I need you to tell me I'm not sick with the dread. Dr. Fuller stopped mid-step, turned to face Ethan, his eyes wide and his face sallow. For the longest moment the two men stared at one another, deciding whether they could trust one another. Tell me what happened, Dr. Fuller said, eyeing Ethan wearily. The two settled across from one another in what had once been the dining room. Dr. Fuller waited patiently while Ethan wrestled with the words to explain his situation. Dr. Fuller appeared abnormally calm and not in the least alarmed that a stranger was about to tell him a fantastical story. I was here about a week ago. I met a woman named Ava. I never got her last name. She brought me here to this house. We spent time together and then, she didn't want to see me again. I went home and a few days later, she came for me. I thought she'd changed her mind. The next thing I know I'm being carted away by the police and paramedics. I saw her, Dr. Fuller. She stood outside my house just wading in the water. I saw her as clear as I see you now. I swear I'm not crazy. My doctor even ran tests. If you need proof, I'm sane, Ethan insisted. Dr. Fuller thought for a long moment, his fingers silently drumming an unheard melody atop the desk between them. You're not the first to come looking for answers. You are the first non-ghost hunter, but not the first. I take it you found me because of that stupid video I did for some dumb kid, huh? Dr. Fuller shook his head at himself. The problem with the dread is that there is no cure. It doesn't reside anywhere, it is everywhere, it takes many forms. If it brought you here, I have a few guesses as to which form it took to lure you. Ava isn't real. Ethan asked no one in particular, his voice and eyes distant and hollow. Dr. Fuller reclined in his seat and heaved an exhausted sigh. This house was built by a lumber merchant. Back when timber made kings of men, Bruno Henderson opened the first lumber mill in these parts. North Carolina once grew some of the most beautiful and abundant pine forests at the foothills of the Appalachian. The Sandhills region of North Carolina turned those pines into tar and pitch for shipbuilders. Bruno was just another link in the chain of consumers and merchants. He had a wife and 2 maids, you see. The house servant was his wife's half-sister, the other was the one who did all the chores outside. Though slavery was abolished by the time Bruno became a millionaire, black folks weren't treated well. His wife's half-sister was about a quarter black and still, she had to resort to working for her sister. The other maid was of Asian origin, no one knows exactly where. Back then, the only Asians around these parts were Chinese, having come over to work the railroads. Every Asian person was simply classified as Chinese back then. Bruno took the poor girl, the outside maid, as his mistress. Rumor says he would sneak up into the attic where the 2 young women slept, and he would, Dr. Fuller hung his head, massaging the bridge of his nose. He would see his mistress at night. The young women assumed that if they told Mrs. Henderson she might put a stop to it. When Mrs. Henderson found out, she marched outside and drowned the poor girl in the laundry vat. She then killed her own half-sister with the fire iron. The Hendersons buried the 2 girls out back somewhere. Neither girl ever received justice. No one has ever found their remains and given them a proper burial. This house is supposedly haunted, hence why it is a museum. No one wants to live here. Ethan shook his head in disbelief. They're just stories, Dr. Fuller. The woman I met was flesh and bone, Ethan objected. I'm so sorry to tell you, Mr. Sullivan, you're not the first person to tell me such a story, and you won't be the last. Not as long as kids keep coming here. It seems almost as though the more attention these stories get, the more we see folks like you. Folks like me? You mean, the damned? Ethan muttered, unable to muster more energy to project his questions. Dr. Fuller nodded slowly. After a long moment of silence, Dr. Fuller rose from his chair and faced the bookshelves running around the room. He ran his fingers across a series of large black leather-bound tomes. He slid one out and hefted it onto the desk, quickly thumbing through the pages until he found what he was looking for. He gingerly touched 2 small photos pressed onto the newsprint pages. Ethan craned his neck for a better look. The pictures were of poor quality, made poorer by the printing press and time. Despite the poor quality, he recognized the shape of Ava's face next to a thin oval face. Thank you for your time, Dr. Fuller, Ethan mumbled. Dr. Fuller gave a single rock of the chin, his eyes locked on the small black print between them. Ethan supposed if the roles were reversed, he too wouldn't want to look a dead man in the eyes either. Ethan rose and made his way outside. Ethan sat down for a lunch of all his favorite things, cake, ice cream, and 2 rum and cokes. He made his way onto the beach and waited for Ava or whatever the thing was that wore Ava's likeness. As the sun began to set, a large bird flew overhead and began circling him from above. Ethan glanced up into a set of hollows where eyes should have been. The bird had a wingspan that promised to carry his dead weight easily. The creature had no mouth either, just a black void where a snaking forked tongue lolled, in and out, tasting his sorrow. The last thing that ran through his mind were Ava's eyes, dark eyes with rays of gold bursting from the darkness of the pupils. The near absence of sclera and the dominance of iris, they were the eyes of apex birds. If you like this content, please like, comment, subscribe, and share with someone who might enjoy this content too.